Just a reminder, intro to CCY in a couple weeks, in 1 week, begins next Sunday, and you're sure welcome to be a part of that, especially if you're new to CCY. That meets in my office for 5 weeks and starts next Sunday at 9:30. Well, Americans like things supersized, and for many that includes their church. We call them mega churches, and by definition that is a church of 2,000 or more in regular attendance on the weekend. By the way, if you are up to 10,000, the new term is giga church. There are about 1,600 mega churches in the United States. Over 800 of those, over half, are in what we would call the southern states. The largest of all mega churches, right here in our own backyard. Life Church is the largest of all. A church that was founded up in Edmond by Craig Rochelle. That's a well-known name in our community. They have now established 29 satellite churches. They've gone outside of the state of Oklahoma, and their average attendance on a weekend is 53,000. There's the Saddleback Church down in Southern California, where Rick Warren, author of Purpose-Driven Life, Purpose-Driven Church, where he preaches, he started that church from scratch, and now somewhere around 22,000. On a Sunday and a Saturday. There's Willow Creek in the suburbs of Chicago. That founding pastor, Bill Hybels, did not come out of Bible college. He came out of a financial business background. And that congregation has grown to over 25,000. Of course, there's Lakewood down in Houston, where Joel Osteen dominates the Christian airwaves, television programming, 43,000 in attendance on a weekend. There's Southeast Christian in Louisville, Kentucky. That's one of the large independent Christian churches, one of the largest in our nation, over 20,000. I remember when I drove into the parking lot and looked around, I felt like I was in a Disneyland parking lot. I remember when I walked into the lobby of Southeast, it was gigantic, and there were escalators leading up to the other levels. I thought I was in some shopping mall. And all of these churches that I've mentioned, they offer quality seminars to church leaders, and we take advantage of that. We travel from afar to hear their stories of massive growth. By the way, when you're just counting churches, half of all Protestant churches in the United States have fewer than 100 in attendance. Half. Next, you go to the next 40%, and so we got a total of 90%, but to the next 40%, those churches are between 100 and 350. That's where CCY falls, is in that. And then the last 10% of the churches in the megachurch. And as I said, church leaders travel. Now, some of us can make the mistake of returning to our churches and trying to implement an exact copy of that megachurch's program into the smaller congregation, and that doesn't usually work too well. There's often major fireworks and some significant divisions possibly, but I still think that visiting the megachurches and gaining some very practical application, I think that's a great idea. We just have to remember, no church can simply copy another completely, because each church has its own personalities, and so new formats have to be carefully adapted and not forcefully inserted into the other congregations. I don't have any great desire to pastor a megachurch, which is a moot point, since no megachurches are asking. I do enjoy visiting them, as I mentioned, worshiping in them, learning from them. However, I just don't have a desire to pastor a mega church. I do have a very strong desire to preach in a growing church. And today we're going to visit one of the greatest, most growing churches, mega churches of all time. The first church in Jerusalem, established in the early 30s, and we're looking at it somewhere between 30 and 40 AD. We've been looking back to forge ahead. We've been looking back at the church in early history as we've got it right here. This book is full of history, and we're looking back in order that as a congregation here in 2018, we might forge ahead. As we've looked in the book of Acts, we've been there for 4 Sundays now, chapters 1 through 4. We're taking a portion of a chapter each Sunday. And this early church started with a bang, didn't it? It started with over 3,000 there in chapter 2. And it grew quickly. By the time we get to chapter 4, where Clay was last week with you, it had grown to over 5,000. And basically, when we get to where we're going today, Luke has just kind of quit counting, because it's grown so large. But it is kind of a stop point that we're going to look at here in Acts 5, where Luke gives us a quick overview of the state of the church. A good time, January, looking at the state of the church. And as we look at it, as we look at this mega church, let's ask ourselves some question, or one question in particular, and it would be this. In New Testament church growth, what actually increases? Okay? In New Testament church growth, what actually increases? We're going to look at Acts chapter 5, starting with the 12th verse. The apostles performed many signs and wonders among the people. And all the believers used to meet together in Solomon's colonnade. No one else dared join them, even though they were highly regarded by the people. Nevertheless, more and more men and women believed in the Lord and were added to their number. As a result, people brought the sick into the streets and laid them on beds and mats, so that at least Peter's shadow might fall on some of them as he passed by. Crowds gathered also from the towns around Jerusalem, bringing their sick and those tormented by impure spirits, and all of them were healed. In New Testament church growth, what actually increases? Power. Number one, there is an increase in power. You saw it there in verse 12. You saw it in verses 15 and 16. Not a description there of just one or two isolated events. These are multiple signs and wonders, and they are a regular occurrence. This is a very, very special time in the church, because it's at its beginning, at its start, at its inauguration. And the Lord wants to make absolutely sure that people understand this thing is of God. I'm sure there was a lot of conversations among the people that were observing that went something like this. Tevye, I just came from the temple, and you'll never guess what I saw there today. What? Gold asks. Tell me. Well, our neighbor, old blind Simon, isn't blind anymore. No kidding. Maybe this Jesus group really is of God. See, that's exactly, I think, what the Lord was hoping they would say, and what they were saying in their everyday conversation. Because verse 12 calls them signs. What are signs for? Well, they're for us to notice. And they are always meant to point out something. In this case, they are meant to point out that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. Verses 15 and 16 there that we read speak of many healings, and And I'm certain that not all of these were believers that were healed. In fact, I'm guessing many of them were just what we would call seekers. But we know this: the Lord rewards seekers. Isn't that what Hebrews 11:6 says? He rewards those who earnestly seek him. I think that often an early believer, a seeker of the Lord, is going to see more of the miraculous than the long-term followers do, because their faith at that point, at that early on set of belief, it needs to be bolstered. They need to really see, this is of God. Jesus is real. I need to make a commitment to him. And health is pretty much a universal concern, isn't it? We pay billions of dollars in our society for health care. We will go to extremes to protect our health. Many years ago, Mark Twain said it pretty well. The only way to keep your health is to eat what you don't want, drink what you don't like, and do what you'd rather not. But we do or don't do, because our health matters. And God uses that to draw us to him. All of them were healed. It's amazing statement there in verse 16. Doesn't mean God chooses to heal on everyone who calls on him for healing. During his later days, John Quincy Adams said this to Daniel Webster. He said, "I inhabit a weak, frail, decayed tenement, battered by the winds and broken in upon by the storms." He said, "and from all I can learn, the landlord does not intend to repair." Yeah. No, we don't find that in every situation that we encounter, where we ask for healing, that God does. But don't miss it in this passage. It is definitely one avenue that God uses to confirm the truth about Jesus Christ, that he indeed is the Messiah, that he is the only way to salvation. This thing is of God. In New Testament growth, what actually increases? Power increases. Number two, there's an increase in numbers. You can't miss it here. Can you? I mean, look again, just peruse that text. Verse 12, look at every word that has to do with amounts. All the believers. Also in verse 14, more and more men and women. Also verse 14, were added to their number. 15, as a result, that is, as a result of this power display, there were more people. It says people came in verse 15. And 16, he uses the word crowds. Crowds gathered. Luke is diligent about keeping count, like I mentioned already, until there are just too many to count. And then he still is referring to numbers, to the fact that the numbers were increasing. Can't count them anymore, but they're increasing, he says. And he says they were increasing nevertheless. You see that in verse 14, that word nevertheless? In other words, even with the withdrawal of the unbelievers from having anything to do with them, even with the furor that had come with the shocking deaths of Ananias and Sapphira, I didn't choose that passage to preach on this morning, but that's in the first part of this fifth chapter. The death of some of the members of the church. Even with that, even with the threat of persecution by the Jewish authorities that was hanging over them, still, more and more people were coming to the Lord. Nevertheless, the numbers were increasing. People on the outside that were looking in could look into that group of believers that body of Christ, and they could see the power of God at work. They could see the generosity of the people. They could see the unity of the believers. They could witness the high character of the leaders, and they were drawn. They were attracted to that body of Christ. What do people see when they look into CCY? What do people see that attracts? Have you looked at it yet inside your bulletin, that insert? The response forms results. One side from our regular attenders and the other side from our guests. You taking a look at that? What do people see? I find it very interesting what 1, 2, and 3 are. I find it interesting that the same top 3 are on both sides of the page, for one thing, whether a guest or a regular attendee. And I also find it that pretty much across the board in all ages, the same 3 came to the top here at CCY. Number 1 was doctrine teaching. Number 2 was dynamic preaching, and number 3, friendship. Wow. Isn't that interesting? I was so pleased to see that as a church, you were saying what we love about this church is that this is a church that's Bible-centered, that puts out truth, doctrine, teaching, that it matters to you. Have you ever considered the teachers that we have here at CCY and the quality of teaching that we have here at CCY and the fact that these are individuals that can be trusted? Not 100%, do we say, because you're the one holding the Bible. You're the one holding the book. And number 1 is to take that book and compare it to what is taught. But look at the level here at CCY of that, and it goes second to dynamic preaching, and it doesn't say dynamic Ron. It says dynamic preaching. We've got people here that are preaching well and teaching well. I mean, we've got, last Sunday you had Clay. I think it interesting that our former preacher is still here, John Miller. I think about Jim McWaters, one of our shepherds. Jim spent many, many years as a pastor, as a preacher in the Christian churches. And he's a marvelous teacher as well. I think about Steve Klaus, who's employed at Mid-America Christian University. Wonder why? Because he's such a great teacher-preacher. Involved many years also with Teen Challenge and speaking with and for them. And how about who was just up here this morning, Don Kirby? Don and Nicole, a ministry there in Ohio for a number of years before they came here, and still open and looking for God's leading in his life. Why are there these preachers and teachers here at CCY? Does it have something to do with the fact that this is a church that rates that highly, that loves what's happening here already? And how about friendship? Isn't that a great blend of truth and grace? Do you see that? You catch that? I mean, you got the truth in that number 1 area, and you've got the delivering of truth in the preaching, and you've got the grace where friendships really matter. We're being accepted and loved and cared for matter. We call them care groups, many of the groups that we're involved in, because people feel cared for. What will people find here at CCY? What are you going to say to them when you hand them one of those cards, that we handed out a couple weeks ago? And by the way, we'll keep those available for you. When you hand them to say, hey, how about coming over and checking out my church? Well, I'll tell you what you can say to them. You can talk about these three areas that you know are already here. You can say to them, I want to invite you to a church that is Bible-centered. That was that first one. A church where there's dynamic preaching. A church where there are strong friendships. What an opportunity to say it's already there. And I find something else about these priorities, these selling points, if you will. It's not stuff that money can buy. Do the facilities matter? Listen, they matter. You rate them low, but it isn't because our facilities aren't well kept and clean inside and out and nice grounds. You rated the visuals low. It's not because those things don't matter. Just let the grass grow up 3 feet high outside. Just let the buildings stink and be dirty, and everything here be way outdated. We're using an overhead projector maybe, or just not pleasing to the eye. And what's interesting is people then don't get to the important stuff. I think what we're saying is that's not the stuff that matters most. It's the stuff that money can't buy that matters most. But we care about these other areas. Sharing that with others, and hey, remember this, whether we have a list like this of 1 to 8 items or not, above all, people will see Jesus in you. See, they don't have to walk inside this building. That's why we're out there most of the time, because they are to see Jesus in you. You are CCY's number one selling point, above all. Jesus in you is the number one attraction. Programs and buildings don't win, that's one of our words, win, build, send, don't win people. People win people. Do numbers matter? See what Paul Wilson, our missionary in the Philippines, has to say about whether or not numbers matter.
I'm Paul Wilson and my wife is Mary. We work on the island of Negros in the Central Philippines. Started there in 1984, and when we first went there, I think there was like 14 churches on the island. And now we have about 100 churches on the island of Negros, and we're using the idea of double vision. That was something that was used here years ago in America, to start churches here back in the 80s. But the idea of perfect vision is 2020. And by the year 2020, we want to double the number of churches. So if we have 100 now, and if every church has a baby, then hopefully in 3 years we have 200 churches. And so we're challenging every church to have a baby. And we're hoping to use technology and use training and livelihood support to support the workers in these new areas. The nomad training, we on our island kind of have 3 geographical areas, and there are 2 different language groups. And so we picked out the leading young people in our existing churches and brought them to Bacolod to be trained. And Mark trained them for a week, and then they went out with the assignment of every church have a baby theme, and then they made video with the local pastors about how we need to start other churches.
So ang atong nga topic nga pag-istoryahan subong is about
Does the church need a baby? Same with siya ng meaning.
kay diba may are nata 100 churches sa bilog nga Negros Island. So kung ang
boy, the young people are just so adept at all the technology, and it's changing so fast I can't learn it. And so we need somebody that knows how to use the technology to connect to the people that's available. And if we can get them trained, then they already have a job and they already have the knowledge, and we can use it to, reach the lost, start new churches. And they were excited after the training, the nomad training, and the first videos they've done has just been such a joy to watch, and the churches have enjoyed it. And we're started, but boy, there's so much more we want to do, with the use of technology. If an animal doesn't reproduce, it's killed or eaten. Or if plants don't reproduce, it's the end. And it's the same way with churches. Every church isn't just the local church. That church has to be starting another church. It sounds like an impossible vision that we have to double when you took 30 years to do 100. How do you think you can do it now in 3? But that's where faith comes in. If we could see it on our own, there wouldn't be any faith involved. And so we're hoping by training and by the help of the Holy Spirit that we can double the number of churches. And we, even a printed church, every church have a baby. And, they're starting to catch the vision, and we're hoping that many more churches will do that.
So there's what an old Southeast Oklahoma boy has to say about numbers. Wow, from 100 to 200 churches. That's numbers. That's measurable. That's something to keep track of. That's something we can have a part of, helping produce those churches. Well, what increases in church in church growth? In a New Testament church, what increases? I just want to quickly mention this last one. There's an increase in respect. Verse 13. No one else dared join them, even though they were highly regarded by the people. I just love this. This is a passage about numbers. This is a passage about how many were joining them. He says, no one else dared join them. Can you imagine that as our evangelistic slogan? We dare you to join us. I mean, what is he talking about here? I think what he's referring to here is the non-believing Jews that would come into the temple, and they'd see the Christian Jews there meeting in Solomon's colonnade, and they were intrigued with the miraculous and with the teaching, or possibly some of them were offended, especially some of the Sadducees and Jewish leaders, and just wanted to spy on them, to infiltrate their ranks. But even those who were just intrigued, I think because of the fear of other non-believing Jews persecuting them. I mean, Peter and John had already been jailed. I think because of the fear of something happening to them like happened to Ananias and Sapphira early on here in chapter 5. 2 members of the church that were struck dead. Try that for your offering meditation some Sunday morning, How about just the fear maybe of the general power display that they were seeing of God? For whatever, they didn't dare join, which means to come near, to associate with the others. But verse 13 also says this: they were highly regarded by the people. There is an increase in respect. Mega churches are not always considered good neighbors. Complaints over the years, as mega churches have grown and multiplied, the complaints have increased regarding what some of the people would call unneighborly behavior, weekend traffic jams, excessive noise, lack of environmental considerations. One church that was a mega church in Oregon said, the impact on our neighborhood is the same as if a large manufacturing firm moved in and suddenly hired 1,000 employees. So we have to be aware of that. How do our neighbors and our community feel about us? Here in this megachurch in Acts, we find that there's both opposition and respect. Let's wrap it up. In New Testament church growth, what actually increases? Power. Are we spending enough time calling on the name of our powerful God here at CCY? Are we giving the Lord a chance to show himself strong, powerful, miraculous? Are we clearly reaching out and praying for, even to the point of ministering to their health, that the power of God might be seen? We had a confidential request come in recently that simply asked this: we have a friend that needs to see the power of God in their life. That was the request. I love that. We have a friend that needs to see the power of God in their life. That increases. What increases? Numbers. You can't ignore this. We just can't ignore this. Increasing in numbers means people. Numbers are people. It means we are bringing people in out of the kingdom of darkness and into the kingdom of light. Now, God does the actual transferring, of course, but we're there to help in that transaction, that He might work through us. Increase in power, increase in numbers, increase in respect. Whatever methods we choose, we got to maintain the kind of integrity that commands respect. Let's stand together. Let's pray for growth. Let's pray for growth, folks, in our own lives, and let it pour out into this congregation. We've got 170, 180 that are actually in this part of our facility right now tonight, this morning. We could have, if every seat was filled, we could have 550. So there's room, isn't there? Let's pray for growth. Let's pray that God's power would be seen more and more in our lives. And not just in our lives when we're here together, but in our lives where we are rubbing shoulders with the unsaved. Let's pray for that, for an increase as we sing together. And if you want to make a decision for Christ, we always have that. Our arms are wide open. The Lord's certainly are, to come to Him. If you want to spend some time in prayer up front, that's great. With others, if you want to spend some time in the back with people who will love you and care for you, we always have that couple back there waiting, and you can just go back during this decision time, during our song together, all right? Lord, bring us growth.